Lethabo.
Hi, Basil.
Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us. I am floored by the community that you have created in the private healthcare space. The support that you give to private practitioners is something that is sorely needed. And I'm privileged to have been invited to so many of your events, seeing the community you've created and knowing that you were actually the first person that needed that community before you started, and then taking the bold step to actually fill that space and represent the people that needed representing. I cannot tell you how much of a fan I am of your work and the many ways that you reach both, number one, your patients, the moms of your patients, and also other fellow colleagues as well. You're really making an impact in the healthcare space, and particularly in healthcare leadership. And that's what I want to discuss with you today. Okay. You exist at the intersection between healthcare leadership and private practice. And I've heard you say from the stage many times that us as healthcare practitioners need to claim our space, rise up, and understand that we have a lot more to offer than just treating our patients, but really making an impact in the community going forward. So I want to ask you, where does this passion come from, and where do you see the healthcare leadership space going, and what do you want healthcare practitioners to know about the space they should take up and how they should conduct themselves as healthcare leaders within society?
Basil, thank you. And I'd like to say I'm so honored to actually be with you here today. And I also really look up to you, just as you look up to me. Personally, for me, Basil, I'm so jealous every time I'm on stage and I see the young professionals where we are actually giving them knowledge and workshops where we're just giving them almost like our secrets and scars and downfalls and pitfalls. And for me, I always feel like and wish if somebody had done that for me 15 years ago.
Yes.
And for me, I must say, to be honest with you, it was my struggle in moving from transitioning from the public sector into the private sector. Coming in, when I left government, I thought I was there for 12 years. I worked in numerous hospitals, Tembisa, the famous Paradiso Baragwana, yes. Johannesburg General, which is Charlotte Maxeke at the moment. And when I walked into private practice, just metaphorically speaking, I would say I felt like I walked in thinking I'm going to just get a croissant and a cappuccino, which is what happened, and that was the end of it. Because then going on forward, then it was like, actually, what skills as a leader do I have here? What do I have in the business space? Do I even have a vision or tabulated, just a purpose and the why documented somewhere? I had none of that. Things like even soft skills, interpersonal skills, communication skills in terms of how am I going to communicate with my stakeholder, which was Netcare at the time?
Yes.
How am I going to communicate with my patients? No way. So it is those struggles.
And stuff.
And stuff, and stuff. And then don't forget now with innovation and digital, with all this digital technology that's coming through, it was like, wow, now a practice management software, what is that? Coming from Bava, where we're using files and then entering that space. So for me, where my passion and my why actually arose, I feel it's in those moment of failure, struggles, challenges, and almost feeling like I won't make it and burning out. That is where then I actually started developing that passion to say, can this not happen to another health professional?
Sure.
Can this be the end? Can I redeem time for them? You know, can my little sister who's coming through or my young daughter coming through, can they not have to go through 10 years of this? Can I, in just a day or two, just give them everything in one little workshop or 2 workshops and save them the struggles that I went through? So for me, I feel that all this leadership training, leadership development, it came from experience, from pain, from actually not managing to do it. And then now we have all this, we can reiterate so many nice things, talk about purpose, passion, vision, be adaptable, but before that, it never existed.
Sure.
And for me, it actually came through, I actually talk about it in 2019, I actually started having doctors coming into my practice. I managed to set up practice at Sunninghill Netcare. In South Africa, the Netcare group is quite respected.
Yes.
And Sunninghill is actually still part of Lower Sandton. So it is in a reputable place. And when people started coming there, they were asking me, how can you, a sister, an African sister, make it in this environment? And they were coming in for all that knowledge. And then that's when I realized that, wow, where I thought I was failing and struggling, because we always struggled and fail forward, I realized that no, you can pause, take pauses in between to empower. Take moments to give back. And that's when now the doctors started consulting about their practices and being a leader, running a practice. What does that mean? And you know what? And I found that since a lot were coming, that's when I scaled up and started actually empowering people in bigger groups and numbers of people. Yeah.
I want to take this down to grassroots level, because when we come up through the healthcare system, we taught a lot of things. A lot of information is thrown at us. But I feel like, and I've been part of the faculty at a university as well, and I feel like so little is left on the table with regards to personal development. And so we need to be some of the most robust human beings on the planet, because we look at suffering every day. And we're staring the horrors of sickness and illness and grief and loss. And we're coming into the situation, and I feel like there are so many gaps that need to be filled, and personal development gaps that need to be filled when we're coming up through the university system that just aren't filled. And so we come into the system and we are overwhelmed by everything we're seeing and experiencing. And then you add on to that the pressures of having a family. You add on to that the pressure of just being a viable person in my community. You add on to that the pressures of being a business owner. I mean, those are all elements that we are so ill prepared for. What are some of the leadership gaps that you see specifically in the upbringing of clinicians, and even in the early years of being in medicine?
So I have a few. There's quite a lot that I've identified, but possibly here I'll mention 3 of those. With number 1 being training. We as clinicians, we get taught on, for example, how to feel a liver, how to listen if there's an infection in the chest, for crepitations. But nobody actually trains us on what does leadership look like. How do you manage your hospital? What does project management looks like? And lack of those interpersonal development and training actually leads to a lot of inadequacies.
Sure.
Within the hospitals, even just looking at the government sector.
Yes.
I was a consultant there before going into private, but very briefly. And the thing is there, it's like now you're a consultant, you're supposed to run a department. But I don't know anything about business. I don't know anything about organograms.
People.
I don't know anything about structures. I don't have soft skills or interpersonal skills that have been given to me.
Yes.
So the gaps that I've identified is that we lack training, number 1, on just how to be a leader and how to manage a department.
Yes.
And then if you take it to the private sector, how do you actually run a practice? And we talk about a sellable practice. What is a sellable practice? How do I actually build my practice into a brand that is actually one day in future I can either give it as a legacy to my children or sell it for and monetize it, And then other things that I've noticed is lack of support. There's no adequate support, mentorship. It's only a few institutions at the moment that are actually investing in mentorship programs and actually providing workshops where the experienced can actually transfer their knowledge to the inexperienced. And for me personally, I can say that as a clinician, anything clinical you will get, in terms of the human body, the physiology, the anatomy, you get that. Everything else, what is the laws around medicine? What are the policies that govern us? We don't get given any of that. And because of that, another gap, because of that lack of support, we see a lot of burnout in doctors.
Yes.
Lots of studies coming out. We've seen that in the UK, in South Africa, of saying that, especially because I'll talk mainly from doctors' perspectives, the God complex that we have in the hierarchy invested in our minds to say, you are the doctor, you are the best, only you can do it, you are the tow truck, you pull in the patients, you do this. And then only then you realize that now when you're a leader, you realize that, no, actually I'm not coping. But then where are you going to talk to? Where are you going to go? There is no support. They talk about debriefing. But if you look in most hospitals, I've never been in a hospital, in public or private, where there's an office for a doctor to go debrief.
Wow. That's an important insight over there, because
yes,
that's just a very practical step that many
exactly
facilities could take.
Yeah, you're supposed to then find a psychologist. By the time you call psychologists in South Africa, they are booked a year in advance. So now you can't even get that debriefing thing. And then another gap that I identified, Basil, is the lack of adapting to the evolving changes. And for me, I can say that innovation. Now there's so much innovation. We're talking about digital hospitals. When I started out before the business side of medicine platform, I had no idea there are digital hospitals. And I mean, patient care at home. We know just a simple home-based nurse going to maybe check one patient and treat bed sores. But now running a whole hospital in somebody's house, for me, that was unheard of. And actually seeing the technology that's coming through. So I feel that the gap, which I would like to say, is also that I've identified. As medical practitioners, we struggle to adapt. We are always like 50 years or 100 years behind.
And I do think healthcare doesn't really lend itself to that adaptation, eh? Because we're taught to stick within the rules.
Yes.
We're not innovation comes with risk, and with patient care we can't have risk.
Yeah. And also just the fear. We are scared.
Yeah.
Because we've never seen it, we've never touched it. And also remember, when we go also to our seniors, they are also stuck in a different age. And then now you're thinking, no, it's already such a life, a human life. You never want to mess that up. And as you said, the medical legal implications with regards to that. Yeah, so there's a lot of gaps. And then I think just for the purpose of this, those 4 that I mentioned.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now you've mentioned those gaps. And I think you're one of the few people I've met who's managed to solve them. And almost crack the code on how to get this kind of to fill this kind of space. Now, by no means are we ever the finished article, and I know even with you, you've got an attitude of learning, attitude of growth, and you never feel like you've ever arrived at a place. But maybe you could just share with us some practical things that clinicians can do to start that personal development journey, to fill those gaps. Maybe just talking from your own life. I mean, I remember being at one of your first events, and you were handing out personal development books, and I found it so novel. It was such a simple thing to do, but I'd never thought about that. Like, actually giving them the tools and having the personal development books not necessarily be centered around medicine.
Yes.
You just be centered around being a professional for sure, but not necessarily centered around medicine. And maybe some of the practical steps you've taken in your personal life to fill that gap and to become the healthcare leader you are today.
So it's been a journey, obviously, and to get here is a process.
For sure.
And the journey continues.
Yeah, for sure.
So for me, I believe that if you're going to be a leader, you need to have your vision and purpose very clear and lead with super clarity. There's a book I like to read by Manda Chiflaro, and he actually says that lead with super clarity. For you to be able to lead with super clarity, number one, you need to actually sit down and introspect and reflect. What is my talent? Because I've learned even through the business side of medicine platform that your talent is your brand. It's like a fingerprint. There's only one of us and we are unique. You have been gifted with something to this world that only you, nobody else can bring into that. And I find that for me to actually sit down and identify that, first of all, my mouth. When I was a child, I used to get scolded a lot. You talk too much.
And now it's a tool.
Your weaknesses and your strength, you can use your weaknesses to actually achieve something, and you can use your strength to achieve something. So for me, I realized that if you can just reflect and identify what your strengths are. And some of the practical steps that I've done is I always say to people, don't be afraid to invest in yourself, as we're talking about personal development. Go to workshops, interact with other people, provide networking environments that will actually even help you. Some of us need help in identifying what our strengths are and who we are. And then once you've identified that, don't forget to also do not be afraid to collaborate. So that is one of the things that I discovered, to say, okay, you know what, I've discovered that this is who I am, these are my talents, but then I don't know how to bring them up. So some of the practical skills I've employed for myself, and which I encourage my team, is find out who is the professional in that space. For example, I'm a doctor, but I'm not an accountant. I'm a doctor, but I know nothing about marketing. So why, if I'm a specialist as a pediatrician, would I think I can just wake up tomorrow and be an accountant specialist?
And do a whole profession by yourself.
Yeah. So that's some of the things that I feel that if you're going to practically develop yourself, then actually collaborate with others in the field, learn to do that. And then as well, be open-minded. Be very open-minded. It's a changing world. It's a changing environment. Travel. I love traveling. I travel for leisure and I travel for work as well. What I thought medicine was in South Africa was a shock when I arrived in Netherlands and realized that, wow, this is actually how they do things. Where I was narrow-minded, concentrating on certain things. And when you're there, be willing to learn. You can be assertive, maintain your autonomy, but be willing to learn other things and actually see what can I actually bring back home and actually integrate into my own environment. So that's what I also always encourage my team to say, you know what, don't be afraid, be open-minded, learn. And then one thing, Basil, that I feel that can save us as healthcare professionals is actually having emotional intelligence.
Ooh. You're opening up a can of worms there for a whole new podcast.
Emotional intelligence. When I used to work in government,
yes,
you don't realize that you become part of the system, especially in the public sector.
Yes.
Where you are just used to even saying next.
Yes.
And then 5 minutes. No, Mama, I don't want to hear your problems. Just tell me where's the pain? Because of the volumes, we struggle then to develop that emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills. So I found that for me, that was one thing and it is still a work in progress, that to say, for example, if you're going to move into private practice, you will have no clients after that. If you're not going to have the emotional maturity to navigate your clients, number one, and to navigate your other doctors, because now we are not just colleagues, we're actually business partners.
Correct.
Who are in competition together. If I'm a ped and you're a ped, it's like a McDonald's and a McDonald's based together. What is my expector? What is your expector?
Yes.
Why must people come and buy my pediatric skills if we're offering the same? So that's one thing that I even say to my team as well, where we actually have workshops, get the experts in. Because, if we haven't been taught, get even psychologists, get even industrial emotional psychologists and industrial psychologists to come in and say, teach us. Yes. What are the few steps that I must take? All of these things. If I'm counseling a patient and I'm debriefing, going through the anger stages, denial stages, then accepting the grief. Same thing when it comes to everything. You can actually apply those clinical skills and take them into the corporate world as well in the business space. So for me, I find that...
some of the points you've raised over there, I really do feel like we could go a deep dive into every single one of those points over there for a full hour, honestly, because they're so they're bursting with fresh ideas and new things that we have to explore, because we haven't really had these discussions with clinicians. We really haven't unpacked these things properly. But there's one I do want to unpack, and that is something that you mentioned time and time again here, and that's teamwork, collaboration. Okay, what do healthcare leaders have to do in order to get buy-in from their team? I mean, you as a practice owner, you've got a team around you.
Yes.
With running your events with BSOM, you've got a team around you.
Yes.
Something I've always loved that you do is you're always elevating your team. You're always giving them their moment in the spotlight and showing their worth and the value they bring to you and to the community at large. That's just one element, but I'd love to unpack the others as well. How do we build strong teams? How do healthcare leaders collaborate with others to get buy-in for their ideas, but also to listen and be empathetic to the ideas of others and the contributions of others?
So, very important, because as we know, no man is an island. And to build an empire, there's a lot of hands that go into that. So for me personally, in all my projects, and with Business Side of Medicine being one of them, is to foster an environment of open communication. I found that if you're a leader, you need to be able to harness the talent of your team. If you are too much of a communist and not democratic, I'll just use that metaphorical language.
Good metaphor, yeah.
If you're too much of a communist, even the little person, or what's the so-called little person, which I believe there's none, might have the solution to problem solving whatever issue that you're experiencing. If there's no open communication, then you actually miss out on that. So I believe that as a leader, besides casting your vision, making it plain, writing organograms, and giving them goals, long-term goals and short-term goals, you need to actually be meeting with your team regularly and getting their ideas. Some of them are actually within the communities. So they can actually tell you that, no, you know what, Doc, actually now we are not, I heard one of my team members said, we are not blogging anymore, we're vlogging. And I'm like, vlogging? What is that? And I could stand there all high and mighty, pretending like I know how to navigate the social media spaces. Whereas, and then guess what? Now we get to learn that no, you know what? Go do that. And even when I went on my Instagram page, just a practical example.
Yes, please.
I used to like going out there as a female practitioner on social media to my moms. Remember, I'm working in Sandton, which is like your lower sentence, which is like your upper market. So I would go there on with no makeup on. And, I noticed that, no, you know what, I'm getting a few responses. There's a bit of a few reactions until one of the team members said, no, doc, try putting on professional makeup. I'm like, what? Professional makeup? Who's going to do that? I don't have time for that. And can I tell you, Basil, by just actually taking in the talent within the team and listening to just that simple thing, I actually increased my reach by just putting on makeup. Because that is the community, unfortunately, that I'm in. I'm a Limpopo girl from a rural village. In the rural village, that will be acceptable. But in Sandton, there's a way that things are done. So when you're in Rome, do what the Romans do. So for me, it's all of that. Number one, your vision must be open, clear, simple, and the whole team must understand it. Buy in, negotiate with them. Number three, as well, of fostering a culture of open communication. And then number four, give them incentives. I know there's a lot of studies being done around that to say, be careful how you do that. Sometimes over-giving incentives can actually discourage and actually foster incomplacency. So how you do it is sometimes it mustn't always be monetary based, because some people are not ready for that. So just give them incentives, spoil them a little bit, take them out, and then just hear what they have to say. And then also, I find that what are some of the things I would say as well, bring them into everything that we do as a team, and also encourage them to go collaborate with others. They can find other partners that I can't find. To a point, I just have to share this. My own personal assistant, I've empowered her so much that you will not believe that she sometimes brings in the big sponsors for some of our workshops.
Wow.
And you know what? I could have disempowered her and say, you're not a doctor, number one. You've never been to any marketing institution. You are not that. But Pauline, I'm so proud of her. Most of the time when we get companies coming in, just even to inquire, she's the one who will tell them about our different platforms and align them to the different brands.
Wonderful.
So imagine if one person is trying to get partnerships, an example, a team of 10 trying to network. How many other people then are we able to create? So now even in our ecosystem, in terms of business side of medicine, it is not just me as the visionary and the leader and the founder of the organization. It is actually everybody who's caught the vision that actually go out there and bring in what you see as a finished product.
Yes, it's so important. Critical what you're saying over there, because oftentimes medical professionals, doctors specifically, and those who are specialists get accused of having an ego. You've mentioned it before, the God complex, and it's almost as though that ego has to die, or that ego needs to be the enemy in order for you to be able to see the value that's around you.
Yes.
And bring that in,
Yes,
and it's only going to help you reach your goals.
Yes.
And better serve the community you're looking to serve as well.
Yes.
But I want to segue slightly into our young people.
Okay.
We have lots of young people studying at the moment, and some of them might be watching and listening to what we have to say today.
Yes.
What is something you wish you could tell 19, 20, 21-year-old Lethabo about what she's going to face and what skills she needs to develop, apart from being a good clinician, of course, to face the world and to potentially lead the world, or lead the world that she's going to be going into, and make a real impact in South African healthcare?
So, number one, I would say to her, it is okay if you don't get it right the first time. We know in clinical medicine, with the God complex and the hierarchies, we do understand we're working with patients and patient care. So if you do make a mistake with us, you could lose a life. Henceforth, we always do everything with shaking hands, and we double check ourselves, which eventually makes us very non-confident, very insecure, and a lot of time with that imposter syndrome, which I hope we'll talk about.
We will for sure.
Yes. So number one, I would say to her that it is okay. Love yourself. Be kind to yourself. What you don't know, go and learn. Do not be afraid to say, there's this area in my life that I'm not getting it right. Instead of sitting down, hiding yourself and being fearful and waiting to be exposed in a moment where now you're supposed to perform. Rather than identify what your weaknesses are and then go deal with it, and then what your strengths are. Another thing I would say is, I wish I was much more goal-orientated. So that's something that nobody teaches us. We just learn a lot of medical language, but nobody tells you that, no, set your 5-year and then your 10-year goals and then your lifelong journeys.
Yes.
Because you can even apply that in your finances to say, no, I'm going to do emergency fund, short-term investment, long-term investments, and then generationally, what actually do I want to do to leave impact to my children, to my great-grandchildren, and not forgetting the community at large.
Yes.
So those are some of the things that I would say to her. And then as well, I would say to her, as I said, be open-minded, travel, go out there. You don't necessarily have to do your courses in South Africa. Go out there if you can, like Prof. Maswime.
Yeah.
I already love to talk about her. She was actually one of my first friend. I would actually use the word friend to go to Harvard.
Yes.
And actually do her fellowship in Harvard. And I can tell you, when she came back, she talked different. She thought different, and that's one thing I know for sure. For me personally, I still want to do that. I did have a family at a young age because I got married actually at a young age. So, and then another thing I would say with putting in the work-life balance, your work-life balance is not going to look like Basil's work-life balance.
No.
It's going to look different, and the priorities are going to be different. So give yourself the space to be who you are and navigate it and work it according to the way that you want. For example, I got married and had kids, and that is fine. But in that, while having the kids, I still managed to do my master's, fellowship,
Superwoman.
specialized, finish, and still author books in that. So problem solve.
Yes.
Problem solve, and not just empty problem solving. Let your problem solving work for you. It's something I feel I learned earlier. Like, for example, with me, in my private practice, I was consulting for an hour. And then I realized that, no, this is not going to work because of my bubbly and talkative personalities. The mom, instead of just the baby, then they talk about their marriage, then they talk about their careers. So then I decided to problem solve, where I said, okay, you know what? Since mothers spend a lot of time on these specific topics, why don't we collaborate with some of the moms and create a book that will address that?
Yes.
So we created a book. The book then became into a TV production.
There we go.
The TV production became into women conferencing. So now when a mom comes to me and I know I only have 30 minutes with her or 20 minutes with her, I always tell, okay, mom, let's do the medical side. Today, I can't touch on this personal stuff, but please go to page number 25. Paragraph 3.
Yes.
And listen, for example, to Sunny talking about this specific topic and see the skills she put in. So you see how now problem solving becomes, and it mustn't be empty. It must count for something. Let your problems, one moment you're crying about it. The next moment, I always say that problems must pay for their time. They made us cry today. Tomorrow, those problem-solving skills must pay something.
That idea, I think, might just be the name of this podcast. Problems must pay for your time. That's such a great insight over there. Yes. But I do now want to talk a little bit about, you said we must touch on this, and I think it's so important for us to touch on it, is the imposter syndrome and self-doubt. And medicine is a very competitive profession.
Yes.
And you are sitting next to people that are doing amazing things. I can tell a short story I can share about myself. I'm a physiotherapist, and when I first became a physiotherapist, I was enamored with the ICU. I loved being in the ICU, the patients you get to treat and the people you get to work with. You get to see the most amazing things.
Yes.
Really, it's the highest level of human ingenuity to see what people are able to achieve and bring people back from the brink of death. It's one of the most amazing things. But I always felt like an imposter when I was there, because you're surrounded by brilliance.
Yes.
And because people need to make critical, fast decisions, there's no time for niceties.
Yeah.
We need to work faster. These patients need to survive. And it took a long time for me as a physiotherapist to realize the value I bring.
Yes.
To step into that value, and then also to elevate my own self, to say, I do have something valuable to contribute to the community. I eventually stepped out of clinical care and went into the business world with regards to building my practices and later on building my platform. Yeah. But it took a long time. And it wasn't always easy, Yes. And as a child growing up in a post-apartheid South Africa as well, you're dealing with people that have had sometimes more privileges than you growing up, and they're far further ahead of you, and you're grappling with this.
Yes.
As somebody who's had a similar background in post-apartheid South Africa as well, as a woman in healthcare, a woman in business leadership, Can you please talk to some of the strategies you've utilized to overcome imposter syndrome and step into what I believe is your rightful place?
Yes. So you know what, Basil, it's so funny. You say that because I felt like that many times. As I said, I grew up in Venda, which is rural Limpopo. So my first experience of UCT was a culture shock. First of all, I felt like I don't talk right, I don't sit right, I don't eat right. Just moving in, let me just give you an example. Moving from a pub-based diet to eating salad. I probably lost so much weight in the first 2 years.
Your mother could do that.
Yeah, all the time. I thought I was in shape. And then when you arrive, they're like, no. First of all, I remember being told there's a Fuller figure. Because I lived in Fuller, in Upper Campus at UCT. So now, just learning to do that. One thing that I solely swear upon is mentorship. Shrink your world. Find somebody who's willing to help you transition in that space. And I'd like to say that because just before I came here, I was actually with Terry. She was my mentor in Sunning Hill Netcare.
Wow.
And she still comes and takes over my practice on Wednesday. She helped me transition. When I went to Sunning Hill, again, culture shock. This is not how we do things here. This is not how we say things here. And I'm thinking, but I'm trained from UCT, Baragwana. Look at my certificates. I can fill a wall with the certificates that I've acquired.
Yes.
And then life always brings you back to a space where it's like you have to again go back to degree 101. So now when I entered the private space, I shrunk my world, but I always say, look for an angel.
Yes.
There is a mentor. There is somebody who's going to help you navigate that space. And can I say, working in her practice with other clinicians in private practice under Valley Zone was invaluable, priceless.
Fantastic.
Just being able to learn that, no, you need a practice manager, you need an accountant, you actually need to do things this way, submit your text on this date, do it this way. This is how you talk to a patient in private and make your life easy. This is actually what you must give them, and giving a lollipop to a child after consultations. And Baragwana, it's out next, and now it's like, no, in private practice, we don't just do that. Like, thank them for coming to you and actually
trusting you with their healthcare.
Yes. Yeah. So I must say to you that the imposter syndrome is real. I've experienced it myself. And even in some spaces now, like now navigating the business space, now again, it's like, where's your MBA? People are telling me, oh, so you're a clinician, you've got a master's in this, you've got this qualification, but yeah, show us your master's in business. And I'm thinking, no, you know what? Now it's like, no, I don't need a master's in business. I'm doing business on a daily basis.
One thing I was actually told by a mutual colleague of ours, who has an MBA from one of the most prestigious universities in the world, actually. I said to him, oh man, I'm really envious of your MBA. I'd love to do my own one.
Yeah.
And he looked at me kind of puzzled, and he said, Basil, you've got over a decade of private practice business experience under your belt. You've lived the MBA. Anyone who has an MBA will come out on the other side saying, but you actually have the practical experience, which is actually where you take that theory and you bring it into practical, where the rubber meets the road and where the real learnings come from, Yeah. And I'm not saying that an MBA is useless. Yes. Not at all. Please, I would love to complete one day.
Yes.
But there is value in experience.
So much. And I can share with you that's also my experience, because I now mentor people with MBAs. I even do doctor mentorship.
Fantastic.
For people with MBAs. They say to me, I've never run a business. I went and I did the MBA. I've got theoretic knowledge. But when I'm trying to put that theory into practice, I've got no idea what I'm doing. And that is where, as well, I had to personally get over my imposter syndrome to say, how do I now lead and mentor somebody with an MBA?
Yes.
And they say to me, no, I just want the practicality of how you draw in patients to your practice. For example, I just thought up of doing ear piercing for my moms during COVID. They couldn't go into the malls to pierce. Everybody was down. It was gloomy. And one of my moms was asking me to pierce the ears. And I said, no, I don't pierce ears. I'm a professional. And I actually even had to go to training for ear piercing and realized that, no, it's not that easy. And then now with the ear piercing, I find that in my practice, cardiacs come saying, no, I just want an ear piercing and a general check. And then you realize that the baby's hands are blue, cyanosed. And then you realize that, Mommy, how come we've never checked this out? And she's like, no, this is my child's color.
Yes.
I actually diagnosed one who was apparently even an Asian manga. So one that was a misdiagnosis.
Goodness.
Now could not even be operated on through ear piercing.
Wow.
So that is the stuff that sometimes we think you're going to sit somewhere and learn it, but you learn. Experience is also a teacher. I'm also all for it, and I still do want to do my MBA. But you know what? As I said, don't be afraid to use your experience and the things you've acquired through experience to also give to others as well. Yeah.
Lethabo, I didn't put this in our preparation notes, but I want to ask you, and I think it's something that you are qualified to answer.
Yeah.
Looking at the healthcare leadership in South Africa at the moment, what is one thing you hope will change in the next 5 to 10 years?
Just one.
Well, you can expand on that, yeah? But one with sub-points is fine. You can take your time.
I can take my time. Okay,
yeah?
great.
Please
Let me
think
just
about it.
think about it, because I've got a few, but I just want to choose one of impact. When it comes to leadership for me, I think that the most important thing I feel we're struggling with in South Africa is adapting to global standards.
Wow.
We are struggling. We are stuck in even sometimes and excuses. We are stuck in a place of in an environment and a culture of, I can't do this because of what happened in the apartheid times. I can't do this because of the color of my skin. I can't do this because I'm a woman. And when we have excuses, we've created a culture of, no, it's fine. If you can commit a little crime, we won't discipline you too much. We'll just give you a little bit of knowledge. And then what we'll do is there's no rehabilitation after that. So I feel that as a leader in South Africa, if we are going to change leadership, even in the way we're managing our hospitals, we need to adapt to global standards. In medicine, we talk about practicing evidence-based practices. There are countries who are doing it. We've got Canada with its health system doing it. Now we are trying to launch in all this NHI, our national health system. But the thing is, we know countries that are struggling with it. Those that are not managing, we've heard even big things where even some of their software has been kidnapped.
Hacked and hacked. Very real. Yes.
Yeah. And now if we are going to develop true leadership in this country, is going to learn evidence-based practices that work. Some of the things that we're doing is pre-1994 things. They haven't worked. So why are we still doing them?
Yes.
Even in our hospitals, like if I go to government now, we're still using old ways of filing. Those files get lost. You always are opening a new file every time. And then when I move into private practice as well, I'm still seeing clinicians using filing, like writing paper trail. As pediatricians, for example, we're supposed to keep our filing systems until the child is 21 years. I can tell you in that 21 years, one of the files will go missing. If there's a medical legal case,
it's just human.
It's never going to be solved, yes.
Yeah.
And then now when you go to even to public system, I've worked in hospitals like Tembisa, as I said, Baragwanath, Rahima Musa. When you go now into the leadership, they will tell you about how we've been doing this 20 years ago. We are not adapting. We're not adapting in terms of tech. We're not adapting in terms of innovation. We're not adapting in terms of how we manage our finances. We're not adapting in terms of how we are managing our departments. We are not advancing our protocol. And yet now the knowledge is even in a smartphone.
Yo.
ChatGPT, if you just type in Google
we
managing,
really no excuses anymore.
Managing and managing and adapting globally, it will probably give you like 2 pages worth of information, and we are not willing to adapt. So I can just say to any leader, and I've seen it as well even in my platforms, doctors or healthcare professionals, whether they're physio or dietitians, when you give them knowledge and they fail to take it in and actually practice it, it's such a sad thing. I can tell you since we've started, I've been a doctor since 2008. And besides even starting formal platforms, we have been mentoring and leading. Even I actually used to run something called ENN Medical Missions with Prof. Maswime.
Oh, wow, okay.
Back in the days,
Yes.
like in the early 2000s. We used to do that. And some of the people, you give them knowledge to say, this is how you actually run a medical clinic. This is the equipment you're going to need. This is what you're going to do. And this is how you're going to triage your patients. But then now when it comes to actually managing, how many clinics are you going to need? What are the finances that you're going to need? How many people actually need to be dispatched? Now that is now leadership.
Yes.
You know, what actually are we trying to achieve here? What is the purpose? What are we doing here? You know, and you find that as you're trying to raise leaders, some will take it and some will not. And I can see that the reason why I like awarding, leaders that have made it, is so that you can say, take them out from the community, show the people the things that they have done and how they elevate them, and show their success to others, because maybe that can be a teaching tool as well.
Fantastic.
To say, just watch this person that you have lived with all your life, your own colleague that you're working with. There is an award and an incentive and a reward to those that actually adapt.
You've touched on so many good points over there, but I do also want to give you a chance to talk about BSOM itself, what you're doing with BSOM, and number one, who is BSOM for? Number two, what does BSOM aim to achieve? And number three, how can they get involved?
The business side of medicine is what BSOM stands for.
Yes.
And I'd like to call it one of my other babies, if I can use that way. BSOM is actually for everyone. When it started out, it was mainly for doctors, because that's the problem I was presented with. Doctors mainly in government trying to transition to practice and closing shop after a year or two. Studies say most doctors close their practices after fail, usually within a 5-year period. But I was seeing even doctors within 6 months locking their doors and leaving. So when they came to me, we started then saying that, they said, you're making it. And then I said to them, you know what, I'm not making it because I'm that good. I'm making it because I'm receiving knowledge, support, mentorship, and actually I'm personally developing myself in workshops. So this is the knowledge that I have gained, and I was willing to pass it on. We scaled, obviously, and then started seeing more doctors. Our first function at Ellen Gray through Mustard Seed had around 50 doctors in there to 60 doctors.
Incredible.
And then that's when we realized that no, doctors work in an MDT, multidisciplinary team. There's no way you're going to empower a doctor. If, for example, for me as a pediatrician, if I've got a neurological patient, I need a physio, I need a dietitian, I need an occupational therapist, and sometimes even maybe psychologists for the mom, including many other support teams. That is when they said to us, our doctors are coming back hyped up, and they want this, they want that, they want that. We have not been part of that conversation. And that's when we started inviting everybody else to say, you can come through and come and attend our platforms. The purpose and vision of BSOM is to empower our medical practitioners in an unspoken language of business, entrepreneurship, finances. So all those things that were not covered up in medical school. And we find what we do is, for example, even me being a founder, I'm not an expert in any of these things. So what we do is we create workshops where we actually invite partners, collaborate with partners that come through and actually educate us, even like you, Basil, where you came and you taught us about marketing. I think the first time when you spoke, it just went over my head. It's like information overload. And then the second time when you speak, and the more and the more and the more you speak, we find that you are teaching us that language to say, no, this is what a brand is. This is what advertising look like. This is how you actually put yourself out there. So that is the main reason for that, to educate. And then number two, to create networking and partnerships amongst doctors. We find that sometimes there's even doctors working in the same area, a GP and a specialist, but they never met. But through BSOM, you actually now get referral channels to say, I've been looking for a gynae all this time. I had no idea that you're just down the road. I've been making this patient travel however many kilometers. So we're creating networking and as well ecosystems where we can actually trade together.
For sure.
And I find that has been super amazing. My story that I like to talk about is of my PA who is from Soweto with a gold tooth. Sister Davis.
Yes.
Who now is a billing bureau with many doctors. She actually turned her house in Soweto into offices. and now lives in a very upmarket place.
Wonderful.
Just through the BSOM platform. And I like to use it as an example because we also have even young doctors like Life Hub that have come through the BSOM workshops and our community.
I think it's an incubator now by now. You can call it the BSOM.
I'm telling you, it's becoming an incubator, and that was not its intended.
Yes.
When we started out, we had no idea what an incubator was, number one.
Yes.
We were just saying we're helping people. Now it's incubated a lot of businesses. Life Hub, we're just two young medical officers coming here and there. It is them who did it. But what we just did is through the platform, hearing information, they knew, number one, to even have the right name.
Yes.
To say, don't just name it Dr. Machaba Prek. That's not the right way to do things now. You must have the right name, Life Hub, and then franchise quickly and partner up quickly. Instead of taking 10 years to build up a practice, you can do it in 1 year by having the right partners. So BSOM, really, we're saying that anybody who's in the healthcare space or is interested in the healthcare space, you are welcome to come to our platforms.
And how can they contact you?
So they can contact us. We actually have a website, www.bsom.co.za.
Beautiful.
And also because it is under Dr. L. Machaba, you can just Google Dr. L. Machaba. There's a lot of projects I'm in. I actually even have a main website, drlmachaba.co.za. You can come through there. And then my Instagram handle is drpede_Machaba. So even though that is focusing mainly on my practice, we also make sure that all our links are also in there.
And you're also on LinkedIn, eh?
Yes, I'm also on LinkedIn as Dr. Lethabo Machaba.
Yes.
Fantastic. Yes.
Lethabo, this has been incredibly insightful. Your real life and lived experience with healthcare leadership is something that I wanted to dive into, and I think our listeners got a lot of value today. I really want to say thank you for your time. I appreciate it so much, and thank you for the work that you're doing for clinicians, for medical providers in the community at large. I just think it's so necessary and so needed. So once again, thank you for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Pezel. And this was really, I enjoyed this, and I really look up to you and looking forward to do a lot of business with you, changing our healthcare space into marketing it the right way with a professional look.
Yes.
And you know what? I really enjoy the fact that you're a person of purpose and impact.
Thank you so much.
And anytime, and thank you so much.
I really appreciate it. With that, all the compliments I got now, I'm going to say thank you to you as well for listening to this episode of Vital Insight. You can definitely find us on social media. You can find us on YouTube and all of your podcasting channels. Be sure to leave us a review. Tell us what you liked. Tell us what you didn't like. And it gives us more insight into figuring out who are the next guests we should get on. And of course, as the podcast grows and as the platform grows, we can get more and more and more and more people to share their vital insights with us. So without further ado, thank you so much. Until next time, bye-bye.